Welcome to the session on Western theories of truth. In this session, we are going to discuss in detail the pragmatist theory of truth. We have with us Dr. Nasi, former professor and head Department of Philosophy, University of Kerala. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you. In this session, we are going to discuss the pragmatic theory of truth. The major theories of truth are three in number: the correspondence theory of truth, coherence theory of truth, and the pragmatic theory of truth. Correspondence theory of truth is held by the realist group of thinkers. Coherence theory is advocated by the idealist group of thinkers. Correspondence theory says that truth is a correspondence or agreement between a statement and a fact. Whereas, coherence theory says that truth is an agreement between our ideas, or it is a belief to belief agreement or relationship. Now, these two theories are based on their own metaphysics. They postulate a metaphysics and then they come to their theory of truth. The pragmatist group of thinkers, mainly from the American region, America, they do not agree with the traditional theories of truth. One thing that they say is that both the correspondence theory and coherence theory is dealing with the question of the nature of truth. What is the content of truth? Whereas, there is another important question to answer, namely how truth is determined or what is the criterion of truth. So, pragmatic thinkers are interested in that statement. How will we determine the nature of truth? What is the criterion or standard of truth? So, that is the basic question raised by the pragmatic group of thinkers. And accordingly, we find the pragmatist thinker, they are not satisfied with the earlier theories of truth. Hence, they are working out a new theory of truth, rather they proposes to redefine truth. So, that is their purpose. They want to give a new definition to truth itself. The pragmatist does not begin with the question about the nature of truth, but the question of what is truth and how we are to know the truth, that is the nature of truth. But the criterion of truth or how truth is to be tested, that is a new way of looking at truth, and that is the point of interest of the pragmatist thinker. According to the pragmatists, any theory or hypothesis or idea is true if it leads to satisfactory consequences, if it works out in practice, if it has practical value. So, this is their idea about truth or idea about an idea, a concept. So, a true concept will lead to a satisfactory consequence. It has got a practical value or it has got a cash value. So, that is what the pragmatists mean by a concept. And therefore, they say that truth is revealed by its usefulness, its fruits, by its practical consequences. So, an ideology or proposition is true if it works satisfactorily, that the meaning of a proposition is to be found in the practical consequences of accepting it, and that unpractical ideas are to be rejected as false. So, practicality or non-practicality is the standard of truth and falsity according to the pragmatist thinkers. And we have seen that there are major exponents of pragmatism. Mainly we have seen three: Charles Peirce, William James and John Dewey. And of these three, John Dewey and William James are interested in the theory of truth. They are specifically concerned with the question of truth, and they have given their own account of truth. Accordingly, we can speak of two versions of or two kinds of pragmatic theory of truth.
Okay, ma'am, can you mention these two types of theories?
Of course, the two pragmatist thinkers are advocating different theories because their points of emphasis is different. Accordingly, we find two major theories. One is called radical empiricism, the second is instrumentalism. So, radical empiricism is advocated by William James and instrumentalism is advocated by John Dewey. So, to have an understanding, we have to look at them in detail. Okay. Now, William James believes that philosophy begins with the concrete. It's not about the abstract
entities.
What is called the traditional emphasis of philosophy. So, quite against that, contrary to that concept, William James believes that philosophy begins with, even the beginning of philosophy itself is in concrete instances, and it must start with something real and actual. That is the meaning of concrete. There must be something real and it must be something actual, and it is from that real and actual entity or happening that philosophy has got its beginning. The immediate experience is the only actual reality. Matter, spirit, body, soul, a priori rules of thought and conduct are all too abstract, and therefore they are too unreal for the pragmatists. So, these are the concepts that are emphasized in the traditional philosophy. Now, for the pragmatist, and in particular for William James, these are too unreal and too abstract concepts. Therefore, philosophy cannot deal with them. Philosophy has nothing to do with them. It has to do with experience, because the world is full of pure experience. That is what William James feels.
So, they go with empiricist school of thought.
So, that is the empiricist orientation is there, we can find. William James saw truth as sometimes manufactured by the verification process itself. You know, there is a famous quotation by him. The truth of an idea is not a stagnant property inherent in it. Very interesting. So, truth happens to an idea. It becomes true, is made true by events. Its verity is in fact an event, a process. The process namely of its verifying itself, its verification. Its validity is on the process of its validation. That is what he writes like this. So, he says that again, the true, to put it briefly, is only the expedient in our way of thinking, just as right is only the expedient in our way of behaving. That is the concept in ethics. So, by this, James meant that truth is a quality, the value of which is confirmed by its effectiveness when applying concepts to practice. So, it is not something ready made. So, it is to be proved in practice. It must be put into practice.
So, it is also theory of verification.
Yes, a kind of verification. So, let us see again. Workableness is not simply the test of truth, but it is the nature of truth. So, here James is coming back to the correspondence and coherence theory people. He agrees with them that apart from the criterion of truth, there is a nature of truth. So, but there is no difference between that principle. So, the principle is workableness. That is both a criterion as well as the nature of truth. Truth is that which works. James again says, true ideas are those that we can assimilate, validate, corroborate and verify. So, these are the characteristics of a true idea or truth. False ideas are those that we cannot. We cannot do any of these things with we cannot verify, we cannot validate, we cannot assimilate the false ideas, but all these can be done with the true ideas, unquote. It follows that ideas and judgments are not true until they are verified, okay? Only they are made true. They become true, yes, they become true only after verification, and their verification consists in their being leading to satisfactory consequences. How will you verify? William James will say that you can look at the consequence of an action, you can look at the consequence of an idea or a concept. Now, if it leads to satisfactory consequence, that idea is a true idea. Now, if it leads to unsatisfactory consequence, the opposite, namely it is a false idea. Okay? The truth is something active, and that will help us deal with life. So, it must be useful in the day-to-day affairs of life or in the process of life.
That is, it should be practicable.
Yes. So, that is the concept of truth held by William James, and the theory is known as radical empiricism. It is strictly based on experience and verification. And
so, does this theory go in hand with the coherence theory of truth?
No, no, never. Coherence theory says that there is no empirical element in coherence theory.
Yes. They accepted the nature of truth.
Yes, of course. So, that is there is an element of the nature of truth also. That means workableness. That is not simply the criterion of truth, but also the nature of truth. So, they are combining these two ideas, but nothing relating to coherence theory. They never agree with that, because coherence theory postulates the metaphysics, the idealist metaphysics. Pragmatists have no metaphysics, and they are deadly against the concept of.
They are empiricists.
Yes. So, this is the theory of truth advocated by William James. The theory is known as radical empiricism. You know, there is another very strong figure of pragmatist movement in America, that is called John Dewey. Or John Dewey is a very prominent figure in the advocacy of pragmatism in America. And we can say that John Dewey advocated the theory of instrumentalism, or his version of theory of truth is known as instrumentalism. So, instrumentalism is a pragmatic theory of truth advocated by John Dewey. Okay. See, John Dewey came to the conclusion of instrumentalism after examining some of the existing theories of truth, mainly the theory of truth developed by John Locke. Okay. We know John Locke is an empiricist thinker, because empiricism in the Western tradition begins with John Locke. Now, therefore, John Locke has developed a theory of truth from his empiricist standpoint. And it seems that since pragmatists are empiricist in nature, they are more attracted towards the empiricist tradition. It seems that John Dewey accepts John Locke's theory, but it is not true. John Locke has been seriously criticized and even ferociously repudiated by John Dewey. Okay? So, he never agrees with the theory developed by John Dewey. Let us see that. So, John Locke put forward the idea that the mind resembles either a blank slate, we know the concept of tabula rasa, okay, on which the nature impresses itself, or it is a dark chamber into which the light of experience streams. So, that is the version of John Locke.
Tabula rasa, the concept.
Yes. This means that observation is pure reception, and that the mind is fundamentally passive in reception. That is what John Locke assumes through his theory of tabula rasa. Now, Dewey dubbed this as the spectator theory of knowledge. Okay? So, that is, John Locke says that in the process of getting knowledge, mind is very much passive. It is never active. Mind has no role to play in the process of attainment of knowledge. And Dewey criticizes this theory and says that he puts a name for that theory. He says that this is not the spectator theory of knowledge, because mind is only spectator there, it is not an actor.
Active agent.
Okay? So, that is why it is called spectator theory of knowledge. According to spectator theorists who range from Plato to modern empiricists, so it is a very dominant theory in the Western tradition according to John Dewey. In the time of Plato to modern empiricist tradition, the theory is available, the spectator theory of knowledge. Knowing is akin to seeing or beholding. Seeing and knowing are identical according to the spectator theory. Here, the knower is to reflect or duplicate the world without altering it, because mind plays no role in it. Mind is actually inert in that process. To survey or contemplate things from a practically disengaged and disinterested standpoint. So, this is what has been criticized by John Dewey. Dewey disagrees with this and advocates the experimental theory of knowledge. Okay? So, quite contrast to the spectator theory of knowledge, Dewey advocates the theory of knowledge called experimental theory of knowledge. Now, it is another name for instrumentalism, we have seen that. For Dewey, Piercy and like-minded pragmatists, knowledge is the product of enquiry. It is not simply seeing as advocated by the spectator theory people. Okay? Knowledge is the product of enquiry, a problem solving process by means of which we move from doubt to belief. So, there is a movement from doubting to the process of believing or accepting. Okay? So, the mind is very active here. Mind is not an inert entity. Okay? Enquiry, however, cannot proceed effectively unless we experiment. So, experimentation becomes very important in the process of enquiry into truth.
But it starts from doubt.
Yes. No, it starts from experience. It starts from observation. Okay? Because he is an empiricist. It starts from observation, but this observation has been modified, interfered and activated by our mind, our mental process. No, change reality in certain, that is, we do some experiments with our observation, so that the reality is changed. What we observe has been changed in different ways. Since knowledge thus grows through our attempts to push the world around and see what happens as a result, it follows that the knower as such must be the agent. So, the knower in the process of knowledge is an agent. Means a person who acts. According to James and Dewey, for instance, to observe is to select. See, it is not simply observing, accepting whatever comes from outside. So, to observe means you have to select. To be on the lookout for something. So, you select or you observe what you want only, not that whatever you find there you are observing. Okay. You are in the process of selection process. Hence, our perceptions and observations do not reflect nature with passive impartiality. So, we are not passive agents. First, because observers are bound to discriminate, guided by interest, expectation and theory. Second, because we cannot observe unless we act. So, these are the conditions of observation according to the pragmatists. But if experience is inconceivable apart from human interest and agency, then perceivers are truly explorers of the world. So, human beings are really explorers of the world, not mirrors superfluously reproducing it. So, we are not mirroring the reality, we are exploring the reality, we are interfering with the reality. So, that is the difference between spectator theory of knowledge and experimental theory of knowledge advocated by John Dewey. Okay.
So, we can know something more about instrumentalism, the theory as such.
Yes. So, John Dewey advocating the experimental theory of mind, what he means is that ideas or concepts are instrumental in character. They are instrumental in attaining certain ends or removing certain difficulties or problems. So, they help us in solving problems. They act as instruments. They can be used as instruments for dealing with our situations. Okay? This view is called instrumentalism proper.
Okay.
So, instrumentalism says that our ideas are instruments for dealing with problems. The instrumentalist explains things such as thought, reflection, intelligence, ideas and concepts. So, these are the concepts explained by or undertaken by the instrumentalist thinker. Thought is not a process of repudiation or copying the determinate objective world. So, according to them, thought is a process of experimenting with the external world. See, how do they define it? So, thought is a way of experimenting with the external world, changing it and molding it.
Okay.
So, the active interference is found there to suit one's vital demands. Why do we interfere? So, it must be useful for us to suit our demands. Then coming to ideas, ideas are not psychical entities as believed by the earlier thinkers. It is of mental in character, product of thinking like that. That is the old concept. But now the pragmatist will say that they are plans of action.
Okay.
Idea is defined as a plan of action, taking into account future consequences. So, what will be the result? Accordingly, we define the plan, we prepare the plan of action, and that is called an idea. Then intelligence, they also give a definition of intelligence, is the ability to organize responses, okay, with reference to future consequences.
So, everything
they have got a futuristic perspective. Okay. Dewey emphasized the utility of a theory is a matter of its problem solving power. A theory or a concept or idea is valuable if it has some problem solving capacity. Pragmatic coping must not be equated with what delivers emotional consolation or subjective comfort. That is the traditional concept. So, those things have no reference to pragmatism. What is essential is that theories pay their way in the long run. So, they have to pay back. Theories have to pay back something, some return they must give us, that they can be relied upon time and again to solve pressing problems and to clear up significant difficulties, okay, confronting inquirers. According to him, true beliefs works, means truth is that which works, works in the long run, or that it guides us successfully. So, truth will guide us successfully when we act on it. A false belief is one that does not guide us successfully. That is the difference between truth and falsity. Truth can be known through experience, experiencing the consequences in the future perspective. Okay? So, if it is a positive result, it is a true one. If it is a negative result, it is a false one. So, that is how we can verify truth. So, instrumentalism is a theory advocated by John Dewey, saying or defining ideas or plans of action which are to be verified in the practical context of solving problems.
So, does this have any similarity with the consequentialist theory?
Consequentialism actually comes in ethics.
Ethics.
So, that is actually, of course, consequence means looking at the result, but the emphasis is different. This is regarding truth and that is regarding the action.
Ethics, morality.
Yes, it is regarding the actions or actions of human beings, but here we are concerned with truth only.
Truth.
Pragmatism is a theory that has been evaluated for its merits as well as defects. Okay. Coming to the positive aspects of pragmatism, we can say that pragmatism has done a great service to humanity, particularly in the field of philosophy. It has made philosophy an interesting and useful discipline. Okay. By showing that all those difficult epistemological concepts like ideas, concepts, thought, etc., as merely practical instruments. So, this is their conclusion. Thought is a practical instrument, idea has practical value, it is a plan of action. So, by giving new definitions, redefining these old traditional philosophical concepts, pragmatism has become a live branch of philosophy. So, it has breathed a new life into the field of philosophy, because it emphasizes things that everybody is interested now and here. It is not about the abstract concepts, it is about the present human life, worldly human life. Okay? Actually, it is a reaction against the excessive intellectualism of the earlier systems of philosophy. It is an anti-intellectualistic, we can say. Okay? Then pragmatists emphasize the creative power of human mind. So, it always emphasized the active interference of human intelligence. So, it says, or it endows a creative power to the human mind, or creative intelligence in the problem solving process.
Okay.
We are asked to have faith in the human intelligence. Okay? So, human intelligence is endowed with the capacity to deal with problems according to pragmatists. But there are certain negative points also. Now, to mention one or two. For one thing, the notion of what works is very ambiguous. So, this workability is the key concept in pragmatism. But what does it mean? When we say that an idea works in practice, so it has got an ambiguity in understanding or explaining that. What happens when a belief works in one sense but fails in another? The same idea may be successful in one case, may be not successful, failure in another case, or in one man's case it has successfully worked, in another man's case maybe it is a failure. So, how can you explain that? So, that is considered to be a problem in pragmatism. Further, it has been asked, when a belief works, why call it true? So, the concept of pragmatism is that workability is the test of truth. Okay? So, suppose you say that idea works, then why you call it as a true idea? Why you relate workability and truth? But why not call it something useful? Is it? So, the truth and the usefulness, there is a difference between these two, and therefore, the pragmatist conclusion of workability is truth has been called into question. A useful belief is not necessarily the same as true belief. Usefulness of an idea or a belief and truth of an idea or belief may not be, maybe sometimes they are different. Then there is a quotation by Nietzsche, there is a point raised by Nietzsche, who criticizes pragmatic idea of truth. He says, sometimes untruth may be more useful than truth. So, Nietzsche comes with a counter argument. So, untruth may be sometimes more useful for a human being than truth. Truth may have its disadvantage sometimes. So, there are positive as well as negative opinions regarding pragmatism. Now, pragmatism may be handy means for distinguishing truth from untruth. Okay? After all, that which is true should produce predictable consequences. In order to determine what is real and what is unreal, it would be reasonably to focus primarily upon that which works. However, this is not quite the same as the pragmatic theory of truth. So, pragmatic theory of truth has not been accepted completely. There are thinkers who are very doubtful about the truth of pragmatism, and therefore, Windelband says, a quotation, pragmatism calls into question one of the greatest achievements of civilization, the purity of the will to truth. Therefore, the truth of pragmatism has been questioned from many quarters, and it has been said pragmatism is too subjective to have a place for these eternal ideas of humanity. Okay? So, in that sense, pragmatism is negative point has been raised. So, it has got positive as well as negative opinions regarding pragmatism, and that is why it has not been fully recognized or accepted in the philosophical circles.
So, I think that the question of truth still remains in the philosophical.
You are right. The question is still open.
Still open, because in continental philosophy the same question is being debated.
Yes, of course.
Hot debates.
But that is true of philosophical debates. It's open question because pragmatism is only one, at one point it has come and its influence has been there, but it still goes on.
Okay, ma'am. Now, can we highlight some main points in this session?
Yes. In this session, we mainly discussed the pragmatic theory of truth advocated by William James and John Dewey. We have first elaborated the radical empiricism of William James, and then we came to John Dewey's instrumentalist theory of truth, where he makes a distinction between spectator theory of knowledge put forward by John Locke, and he names his theory as experimental theory of truth, and proper definition of instrumentalism or instrumental theory of truth is that idea is the plan of action. Ideas are helpful in the process of solving problems, or workability is the test of truth. So, this is the essence of the theory of instrumentalism.
Now, we can give some questions from the session.
Of course, you can give some questions.
First one, explain instrumentalism. Second, comment on the features of radical empiricism. Thirdly, evaluate the spectator theory of knowledge. Fourth, give an account of the pragmatic theory of truth. Can you mention some reference for this session?
Students can go through any volume of the history of Western philosophy, where a section on modern Western philosophy deal with American philosophy. Pragmatism will be included. That is for general reading. Now, for specific readings, we can mention two important books. One is written by Patrick, Introduction to Philosophy, where there are full 2 chapters on pragmatism, including pragmatic theory of truth. And there can be another book by Robert C. Solomon, very important book, Introducing Philosophy, even for the beginners. So, that also carries a good account of pragmatism. Student can utilize these sources along with many other sources available in the philosophy sections.
Okay, ma'am. Thanks for participating in this session.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching this session. We will meet again with another topic in the coming session. Thank you.